Imagine a land so harsh it bleeds men dry, where shadows move faster than fear. And the wind carries the ghosts of warriors who laughed at empires. They weren't an army, they were a force of nature. Born in the furnace of the American Southwest, the Apache didn't just fight invaders, they weaponized the earth itself. To the Spanish, they were Los Diablos, the devils. To the Mexican army, nightmares made flesh. To the U.S. cavalry, armed with cannons and Gatling guns, they were unbeatable. How did a few hundred guerrillas hold off nations for centuries? Why did generals tremble at the name Geronimo? And what brutal secret made them history's most feared fighters? This isn't just war. This is survival forged in fire and blood. This is terror as strategy. This is the untamed soul of the Apache Warrior. We hadn't returned to the post a week before fresh news arose. A Mexican fighter thus engaged before noticing his foe's approach. Left unclothed, head and shoulders concealed within a bundle of yucca shoots or secatongrass, body smeared with clay or sand, moving as slippery and poisonous as the rattlesnake itself, the Apache could and did draw near within earshot of the whites, even penetrating the military camp's enclosures, where we sometimes found his tracks beside the olas or water jars. On such occasions, he favored using his lance or bow, since these made no noise and half or even whole days might pass before the rigid corpse was discovered. Before we continue, please like and subscribe to our channel to support our growing community. It was this distinctive Apache trait that rendered them such a horror to all encountering them. They mastered disguise so completely one might almost tread upon a warrior thus occupied before detecting his presence. Stripped bare, with head and far up in the mountains, were thoroughly known to them. The European soldiers of any nationality would roam about, half mad with thirst and tortured by the day's heat, or numbed by the mountain night's cold winds, unable to discern which plants held value as food and which did not. The Apache was no coward. He understood his craft, and he played his hand to suit himself. He never wasted a shot, and never lost a warrior in combat, where a swift dash across the nearest ridge could spare his life and exhaust the burdened soldier attempting to catch him. Apaches in groups of 2 and 3, even lone Apaches, were known to creep close to military stations and ranchos and conceal themselves behind some protective rock or atop some accessibly situated hill, staying there for days, observing the Americans' movements below, and awaiting an opportunity to stampede livestock, or murder a herder or two, or ambush a wagon train. To chase them proved worse than pointless, leaving us only to enter the casualty. It was less indeed than rifle shot from the entrance, when an Apache, lying in ambush behind a clump of palmilla, pierced him through with a lance and left him dead, wallowing in his own blood. They grasped how to scatter when chased, but regrouped like the crested quail of the mountains, then hovered near the whites' flanks, proving far more dangerous when dispersed than in tight formations. This was simply the soundest military approach for the Apaches to take. Wear down the foe via annoying strategies and by having them constantly vigilant. The Apaches could locate sustenance on every slope, and the springs, waterholes, and creeks high in the hills were perfectly familiar to them. The Spanish crown had been forced to keep 4,000 dragoons to control a tribe of bare savages, who disdained any shield against the bullets of the Castilians, who declined to fight when pursued, scattering like their own plumed quail, letting the pursuit become a phantom hunt. This happened when an official assisting the government arrived to consult the commander. He left the adjutant's office before noon and hadn't gone 1,000 paces when an Apache, waiting in ambush behind a clump of palmilla, pierced him through and through with a lance and left him dead, weltering in his own blood. We'd scarcely returned to post a week when fresh events stirred discussion. A Mexican conducting government work arrived to confer with the commanding officer. Departing the adjutant's office before noon, he hadn't gone 1,000 yards, less than rifle shot from the door, when an Apache, concealed behind a yucca clump, pierced him through the chest with a lance, leaving him dead, wallowing in his blood. Pursuit proved futile. We could only bury the victim. Apaches in pairs, trios, or even singly infiltrated near military posts and settlements, hiding behind rocks or hilltops for days to observe American movements below. They'd stampede herds, kill herders, or ambush wagon trains. Disguised with yucca shoots or secatongrass bundles on their shoulders and mud-rubbed bodies, a warrior could remain undetected until nearly stepped upon. Their knowledge of every hillside's food sources, springs, and mountain streams was absolute. White troops, whether sweltering in desert heat or freezing in mountain winds, wandered half-crazed with thirst, unable to distinguish edible plants. The Apache never wasted a shot and never fled a fight unless a swift ridge crossing saved his life. This evasion strategy defined their warfare, vexing tactics to exhaust heavily clad pursuers. Scattered, they proved more formidable than in compact formations, like mountain quail hovering on flanks. Spaniards maintained 4,000 dragoons merely to check these naked savages who scorned bullet protection. The Apache understood his craft perfectly. He'd approach within earshot of whites, even entering camp enclosures where we found his tracks beside water jars. Preferring silent lance or bow attacks, he'd lie motionless for hours like a rattlesnake in sand until discovery. Such tactics made Apaches universally feared. They knew mountains intimately. No Caucasian force could match their endurance. This was their strength, not cowardice. To lose a warrior in combat was rare. When dispersed, they forced phantom pursuits. One warrior shot near Fort Bowie collapsed as if slain, playing dead so convincingly that his body stiffened before detection. Visualize the herder's or wagoner's mutilated body discovered nearby, signaling nearby Apache presence. When the warrior sought intelligence about pursuers or contemplated delaying tactics, execution might be briefly postponed. Where young children were captured, too small to survive without maternal care, adoption was standard. If old enough to endure hardship, captives joined the band and received kind treatment as if Apache-born. Their warriors' stamina during raids inspired awe among all opposing soldiers. At least 20 such captive incidents occurred near Prescott, Tucson, Camp Grant, Tres Alamos, Florence, Williamson's Valley, and elsewhere. Discarded clothing from captives, often too small for adults, held minor strategic value. Preparing for raids, the Apache wore minimal attire: thigh-high buckskin moccasins secured by a waist string, a muslin loincloth trailing behind, a buckskin hat with raptor feathers, his rifle or bow with reportedly poisoned arrows, ammunition, a blanket over his shoulders, a wicker canteen, some jerky or pinole, and protective medals or rosary. He traveled light, relying utterly on nature's provisions. Unlike civilized men, he'd strip completely if needed. The Apache's endurance was phenomenal. 75 miles daily under pursuit was routine. Their tactics involved multiple exhausting marches to cripple even the keenest trackers. They seemed indifferent to Arizona's and northern Mexico's furnace-like heat south of the Gila, temperatures where U.S. soldiers collapsed. A small stone or twig chewed in the mouth stimulated saliva flow, letting them survive almost camel-like periods without water. Their vision detected distant troop movements or approaching wagon trains 30 miles away. Spanish writer Torquemada lamented Spain's inability to subjugate these naked savages. Subduing the Apache proved difficult, not from tactical genius, but from his minimal needs and ruthless efficiency. He showed no mercy to adult captives, executing them swiftly against rocks or trees unless temporarily spared for information. Settlers viewed Apache raids as inevitable landscape features, an ever-present expectation. To white observers and Mexican victims alike, he embodied cruelty, brutality, and utter mercilessness. He quenches thirst minimally, journeying with fewer burdens than any people worldwide, surpassing even Australians in austerity, though occasionally permitting himself comforts. The Apache, like indigenous tribes everywhere and many civilized men, obsessively gambles, staking every possession. Few instances illustrate their ruggedness better than one I witnessed in 1886 at Fort Bowie's Post Hospital, where an Apache scout was treated for a thigh gunshot wound. Immediately upon our approach, the wounded young man requested tobacco smoke, receiving cigarettes. Placing one in his mouth, he struck a match calmly against his own foot. Its horny, calloused surface resembled a mud tortoise's shell. John G. Bourke, Captain, 3rd Cavalry. Typically, the Apache traveled unencumbered. Only when many journeyed together did one bear the mushka's hoops and poles. For amusement, they carried painted sticks for tsetchis games, Mexican-style horsehide card packs, or occasionally small stakes when unusually large groups gathered, ready to wager all they owned. They were never truly conquered, not by steel, not by gunpowder, not by nations that rose and fell around them. The Apache warrior didn't fight for glory or conquest. They fought for survival, for the right to exist on the land that forged them. Their resistance became a legend written in dust and blood, a testament to the human spirit pushed to its absolute limit and beyond. Their tactics, the ambushes, the vanishing, the relentless endurance, didn't just terrify armies. They changed warfare forever. From the jungles of Vietnam to the mountains of Afghanistan, the ghost of the Apache strategy walks with every guerrilla who strikes from the shadows. So the next time you stand under a vast, unforgiving sky, or feel the weight of impossible odds, remember the shadows that moved like ghosts. Remember the warriors who became the land itself. They are the Apache. And their echo never fades.